Okay, hello everyone and welcome to this little training where I'm going to explain you a bit how the things are working in friLingue in the camps, what you can expect, what are the rules, and also a few tips for your language lesson and a few ideas of activities. So, let's start with the staff at the camp. Who is going to be there? Obviously, you have the teachers, like you are the bones of the camp, like everything basically rely on you. Obviously, the classes in the morning, but also all the activities during the day. Then you're gonna have a camp leader. This person is more like responsible for the general logistic of the place, for the general organization, to make sure that everything is running smoothly. The camp leader is also, of course, responsible for the communication with the parents, as well as the communication with the office. So, for example, if in your class you have a kid that doesn't really, respect the rules, that you don't really know how to manage, you can, of course, always ask the camp leader to call with the parents, for example. Like you cannot directly contact the parents. Camp leader, teachers, and volunteers. So volunteers, firstly, they are not paid. They are volunteers, and they are here to help in the kitchen mostly, and to help with the housekeeping of the place. We also have content creation volunteers. They're a bit different. They are going to take photo and video during the lesson, during the workshops, the activities, and put it on Instagram and TikTok. So if you are not comfortable with your image, your face, being on social media, you need to tell this person, the content creation volunteers, that you don't want it. So then he or she will make sure that they don't film you, okay? But yeah, most of the volunteers, they are normal volunteers, helping in the kitchen and helping to clean the place. Which is why they are mostly responsible to cleaning the place after the students, not after the teachers. Which is why it's very important that you keep the place tidy. For example, we have a lot of times teachers take a coffee and they drink it and they just leave it on the table and go to do some activities. Then that's really annoying for the volunteers because that means they need to clean the coffee cup after you. Same, for example, some teachers, they're gonna wake up a bit late on Saturday, they're gonna have a breakfast a bit later. That means that you need to clean your own breakfast, okay? It's not the volunteers to clean after you, the teachers. The volunteers are here to clean after the kids. Alright, then next thing to talk about is what you can expect on your very first day, which is a Sunday. So technically you need to arrive on Saturday around 6 p.m. So that you can have dinner with the rest of the team, meet everyone, and get to know a bit the facilities. And then on Sunday you're gonna start with let's say the real work. So we usually start the Sunday with a brunch around like 10, 11, something like that. Then we come all together, volunteers, teachers, camp leaders, and sometimes we also have kids that help with it, with the general cleaning of the camp. Except the first week, the camp is already clean, but if you arrive in the middle of the camp, then yeah, you're gonna have to also do that. So cleaning of the camps lasts usually 1 or 2 hours. It's nothing like crazy. Mostly it's cleaning the rooms of the kids, making sure the general area is tidy, and yeah. Then we welcome the new kids. The new kids are supposed to arrive at 5 p.m. But a lot of parents, they're gonna come much before. Sometimes like in the morning, sometimes at 2, 3, 4. So we need to be ready basically anytime to welcome some new parents with the kids. What does it mean, welcoming the kids? First thing, very important, we are going to print a list of the kids, like all the kids of the camp, with next to it the accommodation list. So when a kid arrives, first you need to tick these kids off the list so that we know the kids arrive. And yeah. Second thing, you need to show the kids the room, like take the kids to the room. Maybe the parents also want to see how it looks like. It's okay, they can come with the kid, and then explain the kid that they're gonna have to meet at 6 for the icebreakers. Now, for this specific time, it also depends on the camp leader and everything, but generally we do it around 6. So yeah, welcoming the new kids. Obviously, you are new, so you're not going to be alone doing that. We have a lot of experienced teacher, but yeah. Then, when all the kids arrived, we start the icebreakers, usually around 6. So we need to go to find all the kids, tell them to go down, and then doing some game with them. So every teachers have to be present so that you can introduce yourself to the kids, get to know the kids, and then we explain the rules to the kids before dinner. So maybe the camp leader is going to ask you to do the translation, because we always we always tell the rules in 3 languages: in English, in French, and in German, so that everybody understands. Sometimes it also happens that we have some kids that don't speak any of those languages, like they only speak, I don't know, Italian, Chinese, or Russian. So if you speak like one of those languages, the camp leaders might ask you to translate to those kids. After the rules, we go for the dinner. One thing very important for you to know, we always let the kid eat first, and then the staff can eat. Also, regarding the lunch dinner, if you have some specific diets, for example, if you're vegetarian, vegan, if you're allergic to something, please tell us in advance. When I mean us, I don't mean me, I mean the camp leader and the cook. So you're gonna be on a WhatsApp group, normally, maybe 1 or 2 weeks before the camp starts, you're gonna be added. And here you can write in this WhatsApp group when you will arrive and if you need some specific diet. Very important for the cook to know in advance. After the dinner, we do a language test with the kid. So you don't need to prepare anything for the language test, like we have something ready. But you will need, so we have like a writing test. But we don't do only the writing test. We also do oral test, because sometimes some kids are quite bad at writing, but they can speak quite well, and vice versa. So we always do both. So yeah, you're gonna be along with the other teachers that teach the same language as you. You're gonna speak with every kids individually, and you're gonna try to divide all those kids in different groups. So obviously, like if you are, I don't know, 2 German teachers, you have 10 kids, then you need to make them into 2 different groups. It doesn't have to be, in that case, 5 and 5. It can be 3 and 7, for example. Because the most important is that they all have kind of the same level. It's not always possible to do it perfectly, but yeah, that they have the same level. That's the most important. And after the language test, the kids have some free time. You, the teachers, you're gonna decide who is taking with which group, and then you're gonna have a big meeting on Sunday night to organize the next week with the camp leader and all the teachers. Sometimes this meeting is done on Saturday, but sometimes it's on Sunday. It depends. So yeah, that's a typical Sunday. It's quite intense, as you can see. Then for the rest of the week, it's usually very similar. You have every day, like, someone needs to wake up the kids. Then you have the class from 9 to half past noon, I think you say in English, yeah? So 3 hours of class with a little break. Then lunch. Then either workshop or an excursion, it depends. Monday, Wednesday and Friday it's workshop. And on Friday it's workshop plus cleaning the rooms. We need to tell the kids to clean each individual rooms, yeah? And after is dinner, obviously, then some evening activity, and then we need to put the kids to sleep. So it doesn't mean putting them in the bed, it mostly means to make sure that when it's bedtime, that they are in the room, they are not in other kids' room, they are not making too much noise, and yeah. So yeah, that's for you the typical day at friLingue. Alright, the rules of the camp for the teachers. First, it's completely forbidden to smoke in front of the kids. If you're a smoker, you have some designated places where you can smoke. Keep in mind that you are like a role model for the kids. Like usually kids find you very cool and everything, so please, if you're a smoker, yeah, give the good example and don't do it in front of the kids. Same for alcohol, obviously. But alcohol, it's a bit more strict. You cannot drink alcohol before the bedtime of the kids. So sometimes it's 10 p.m., sometimes 11, it depends on the camp and the age of the kids. And even at 11, it doesn't mean that you can get completely wasted. You always need to be in a normal state of mind to react if there is any emergency. And obviously, there always have to be at least one person with a driving license that is sober in case of emergency. So yeah. Then, keep a distance with the kids. What does it mean? It means specifically a physical distance. For example, during the disco, you cannot just remove your t-shirt and dance like that with the kids. Some people did it. It's really not okay. Some kids might be uncomfortable. Same thing. It happens that maybe a kid is gonna ask you, "Hey, can you put like solar cream on my back?" That's not okay. You cannot do that. You cannot touch physically the kids like that. So yeah, it's kind of obvious, but just to put it here. Another rule is that you always need to have data in Switzerland. So if your phone provider does not provide for Switzerland, then there is quite a cheap option for those that can have eSIM. This option is called Digital Republic. You can Google it. It's very cheap, like 10 francs per month, and you have unlimited data in Switzerland. Then, punctuality. Very important to always start the lesson on time. So the lesson starts at 9 a.m. Sorry. That means you need to start to pick up the kids to tell them to come to your classroom at 8:55. Because remember, the kids do not have their cell phone at all time. In fact, they only have the smartphone, phone, usually for 1 or 2 hours per day. Now it depends on every camp, but generally it's after lunch before the workshop or after dinner before the evening activity. That means in the morning they don't have the phone, so they don't know that it's 9 a.m. So you as a teacher must tell them to be on time, especially in the first day or two, to actually look for them in the camp, to tell them to come to the classroom, and so that you can start at 9 a.m. Same goes for the workshops and the evening activities. We need to start on time. And even more for the excursion, because then we are dependent on the bus, timetable and everything. One more thing very important is the communication. If you feel like something is not right, if you're annoyed by a situation, don't keep it for yourself. Please talk with the camp leader. And if the camp leader is the problem, then talk with me. And if I'm the problem, sorry, I'm joking. Then, yeah. One more rules. Keep the camp tidy. I don't know if I said it before, but we have a team of volunteers that are here to make the housekeeping, which means like to clean the general area. It doesn't mean that they need to clean after you. They need to clean after the kids. So please, if you drink coffee, if you do anything that produce like a waste, clean after yourself. And finally, take care of the material. You're gonna have whiteboards, you're gonna have markers, you're gonna have, if you do workshops like painting brushes and stuff like that, please take care of it. It's quite expensive. So yeah. Same thing goes with the car. If you are driving, please respect the speed limit. If you have a fine, you have to pay it. Sometimes we pay half of the fine, but generally the general rules is that if you have a fine because of a speed limit, you pay it. So yeah, if you drive, please respect the rules. That was the rules for you, the teachers. Now for the kids. Obviously, no smoking, no alcohol, no drugs. Yeah. If you see a kid doing this, please inform the camp leaders and tell the kid to stop. Second thing, the kids need to respect the bedtime. So if you see a kid outside of the camp at 1 in the morning, it's not okay. You should tell the kid to go back home, to go back in the camp, sorry. Don't go to private properties. That's obvious, but actually it's not so obvious. Because, why did I write it here? Because in Switzerland, you have a lot of times private properties that doesn't look like private properties. Meaning, most of the time, especially like in Saint Bernard or Leeds, this camp, you have a lot of green space, like green, what's the name? Grass, sorry, yeah, grass. And it may look like it belongs to everyone, but no, actually those are private farm, and grass in Switzerland is like gold. They use it for the cows to eat the grass so they can make nice milk and nice Swiss cheese. Which means that the farmer are really not happy when they see kids playing football in their grass field. So yeah, That's what I mean by private properties. And obviously they cannot go in the garden of a neighbor, for example. Like if you see kids are playing football and they throw the ball at a neighbor, you as a teacher have to pick up the ball. The kids cannot go by themselves. Again, obviously, if you see a kid not taking a good care of the material, for example, they are playing ping pong, they lost, and it happens that they throw the ping pong racket on the ground, it's not okay. You need to tell the kids that they cannot do that. One more rule, they cannot go outside of the camp alone. They always need to be in group, and they always have to be at least one teenager in this group. So for example, a group of kids that are 8 years old cannot go alone of the camp, obviously. For those specifics, like how many kids exactly have to be in a group and what will be the minimum age, you need to check with the camp leaders of your camp, because it depends from camp to camp. And finally, obviously, no bullying, no cursing. Like they need to respect you, they need to respect the kids. If they don't do that, please talk with them or talk with the camp leaders so that they solve the situation. Now, that's it for the camps. If something was not clear, you can always send me a WhatsApp message and I can answer to you. Now, let's go for some tips for the lesson. So, most important thing, the class has to be centered around oral communication, speaking and oral interaction. Why? Because you're gonna have small groups of kids, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids usually. And generally those kids, for example, if you're a French teacher, they are already learning French at school, but with 25 other kids. So they don't really have time in school to actually practice, to talk. That's why they go to those camps to be able to do that, to actually practice talking. So it's very important to do that. So please do not just give them some random exercise that they need to feel and write. That's not the goal of those camps. They really need to practice speaking. Then, a little tip on how to structure a class. So, a lot of you, maybe you don't have like an education in how to teach language to a foreigner. It's very specific. It's a bit different than a French person learning how to speak French. So, yeah. You don't just teach them grammatical objective. You cannot just like go in the morning and tell yourself or tell to the kids, today we are learning the past tense. It's not like that. You need to find a real life objective, what we call a functional objective. I give you here a few examples, like describing a friend, buying something at the supermarket, asking for direction, describing your morning, etc. So those objectives, they are like real life objectives. So the kids are going to really understand what they are learning. They understand that they are not just learning the past tense. They are learning how to describe your day, for example. It's a bit different. It makes more sense for the kids. And then, of course, through those functional objectives, you're going to actually teach them, sneakily, real objectives like grammar, phonetics, vocabulary. Let me give you an example. Describing a friend, it's clear. They know what they have to do at the end of the lesson. They need to be able to describe a friend. But they're going to learn a bit of vocabulary. They're going to learn how to use the adjectives and a bit of present tense with the verb to be and to have, for example. Let me remove my face so you can see. Yeah, by choosing practical goals, students see the immediate usefulness of what they're learning, and blah blah blah. That's what I just said here. Hope it makes sense. One more thing, the evaluation is absolutely not necessary. You don't need to do an evaluation on Friday at the end of the week, but it can be nice to do. If you want to do an evaluation, first it should not be like 3 hours, but a nice thing to do will be to do the very same evaluation on Monday morning, and then again on the Friday morning, so that they can see their evolution. That would be a nice thing to do, for example, but it's really not mandatory at all. Sorry, you do not need to do an evaluation. One more thing, keep the lesson student-centered. Sorry for my English accent. Ask them what they want to do. Very important. Sometimes you have kids that want to learn some very specific things. Also, you need to see what do they like to do in life. Like if they are more, like for example, if they love sport, try to make lesson about sport. Yeah. Also, it's nice to try to have as an objective something they can actually do in the camp. For example, as one of the objectives could be to make an interview. That's a nice one. That's something they can do in the camp. They can interview the kids. Now, also one more thing, a nice thing to do in those friLingue class is project type of pedagogy. It means that you will every day work a bit on a project, and then so it needs to be, I would say, a project that the kids want to do, that they volunteer to do. You cannot. It's not really nice to force them to do something they don't want to do. Yeah. And you need to make them believe that the ideas come from themselves. For example, you can give them, to be a bit like tricky, 3 choice. 2 you're sure they're not gonna like, and the 3rd choice is the one you want to do, for example. But anyway, yeah, the idea should come from them. They will be much more motivated. I wrote here one example of a project that can work, is to make a little newspaper about the camp, all about the village. For example, if you're a French teacher and you are in a French-speaking environment, in the French-speaking part of Switzerland, use this. One of the projects can be to interview a bit the locals of the village. So for that, they will need to learn a lot of interesting things. They will need to know how to say hi, how to present themselves, how to ask questions, how to say goodbye and thank you. And also, they will have to learn phonetics, how to actually speak so that everybody can understand you. Especially for French, it's quite hard. So yeah, with a project, of course, you need to choose something that makes sense. If they're A1, something that is easy, like not, for example, making a movie, it doesn't really make sense. Sometimes, like the kids, they really want to make a movie, but if they're beginners, writing a script in a language you don't really talk is kind of hard. So try to have a project that match the level of the kids. One more thing, energizers, very important. You have 3 hours of lesson every morning. It's a lot. You cannot expect the kids to be focused all the time. So when you see that they're starting to sleep, when they're not focused anymore, you can stop a bit the class and make some physical activity. I give you here a few examples of those activities that actually use the languages, but it can also be a completely physical. I mean, you don't really have to use the languages. It can be simply, if you have like sportive kids, let's run 100 meters, let's see who is the fastest. It can be, let's make a little walk of 10 minutes and speak of anything that you want, just so that they don't, sit all the time. But it can also be an energizer that use the languages. So, for example, I give you here 2 examples, I'm going to explain them. The most obvious one that you probably know is Simon Says. I think that's how they say in English. So you tell them, okay, every time I do a sentence starting with Simon Says, you have to do it. For example, Simon says, touch your nose, they have to touch the nose. But if you just say like jump, but you didn't say Simon Says, then they should not jump. So that's quite fun, and kids understand easily, and they can also learn a bit of vocabulary with this. And they use their bodies so they wake up. One other thing is hot, hot. So you can do it in any language. You just choose 2 words that are phonetically similar, like hot and hot, cut, cat, etc. In French, chameau, chamois, for example. And you divide your kids into 2 groups. So for example, here you have 6 kids. 3 kids are the group hot and 3 kids the group hot. You make them face each other, let's say like 2 meters between each of them, and then you tell them you have a safe place 3 meters behind you. Okay. And then you start to make a little story. You talk, and every time you say the word hot in the story, then the group hot needs to catch the other group before they go to the safe zone. And vice versa. If you actually say the word hot, it's the contrary. So then they really need to pay attention to what you say, to hear the phonetics, to try to understand the story maybe so they can anticipate which word you're going to use. And it makes them run and focus a little bit. That's a nice one. Another example here that I wrote is a paper battle. Usually kids love it. You tell all your kids to take a piece of paper and they have to write something about themselves on this paper. For example, I come from South Korea, whatever. Then you tell them like to make a ball out of their paper, and then you give them like 1 minute for a paper battle. So they have to throw the balls at each other, blah blah. So okay, they have fun, they play a little bit. After 1 minute, you say stop. Then everybody has to pick up one ball on the ground. They have to read what it says and try to find out who wrote this sentence. That's quite a fun one. And yeah, you have also a lot of ideas for Energizer online on Google. Again, Google is your friend, you can ask it. Then, a few ideas of activities that usually work from experience. First one, theater. Usually kids, they maybe don't like it at the beginning, but then they always enjoy it in the end. It's really nice to work on phonetics, it can work also for any level. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare. You can use either like you can ask them to make their own piece, or you can try to find online some like theater play that is good for beginners. But yeah, usually they really love it. You also have a lot of tips on how to use it specifically to learn a language online. Another activity here that I wrote, post-it body. If you want to teach them anything, here I take the example of the body, it's quite funny. So you take a kid, okay, and you put a post-it, how they say in English, I think sticky notes. You write on a sticky notes, for example, like head, and you put it on his face. Sticky notes, head on his face, and arm, leg, etc. And then, so yeah, they learn it that way. Okay, this is the head, this is the shoulder, etc. And then you're gonna take like a kid, okay, and then you put back the sticky note, but in the wrong place. You put the arm here, the leg here, etc. And then you have to tell them, okay, now you have 1 minute to put back the sticky note at a good place. So yeah, that's quite a funny activity. Usually kids really like it. They even love it more when it's a bit competitive. When you have two different groups, they need to put back the sticky note as quick as possible. And of course you can do it with a lot of other things. You can do it for the classroom. You put a sticky note on the computer, sticky note on the whiteboard, blah blah, and then you put them at the wrong place and they need to put it back where they belong. Third activity, debates. They always love it. Now, how to structure a debate. You cannot just tell them right away, okay, for or against nuclear. Okay, make your mind. They are kids, they usually don't have really a good knowledge of specific topics. If they do, then amazing, you can do it right away. But usually it's nice first, before you start the debate, to learn a bit about the topic, and mostly to learn about vocabulary about the topic. Let's take the example of nuclear. It's interesting usually debate because you have good arguments for and good arguments against. So you ask, so maybe let's say for example, you try to find online the little YouTube video or documentary that explain a bit nuclear. I know there is a lot of good ones for French, but I don't know for English and German. So you see it with them, you talk about this topic, you see a bit of vocabulary about nuclear, about energy, blah blah. You learn how to give your opinion. So I think that, I agree, I disagree, because, nonetheless, blah blah blah. And then either you actually ask them what they think, and then they can divide themselves between those that are for or against, or you don't ask them and you tell them you have to be for nuclear and you have to be against. And then you give them like 10 minutes to find arguments. That's up to you, if you give them the choice or not. So yeah, give them a bit of time so that they can write sentence and arguments, and then yeah, they simply do the debate. You are here as person in between, and yeah. One more activity, the anecdote duel. Kids usually love that. So you can also make it like a competition. You don't have to. You ask every kid to find one short anecdote and one long anecdote. Like short anecdote, one sentence. For example, I lived in North Korea as a child. And then long anecdote, something a bit longer, where they actually need to describe a bit the context. And you can also do it yourself as a teacher. You can start to give them some ideas. So yeah. You give them a bit of time. Obviously, for this activity, it's mostly like to practice the past tense, so don't do it with the very beginners. They think, okay, think of anecdote, then they present it to each other, and one kid start to say his or her anecdote, and everybody else have to think, is it a true one or a fake one? So yeah, sorry, I didn't say it. It can be true or fake. Both anecdotes can be real, and both anecdote can be complete invention. They choose, okay? And then when they say it to the rest of the class has to agree to talk. They can also ask a question to decide whether it is true or not. And then they decide, and then you can also even make a point system if you have some competitive kids. That's up to you. One more activity, the werewolf. Kids always love it. It's more like for advanced. If you don't know what is a werewolf, you can check online. Then it's also nice on Monday to do icebreakers. Here you have a few examples, like one true, one line, quite obvious. Bingo, it means like you prepare a bingo, for example, like find a kid that speaks Italian, find a kid that have been to Spain, blah blah blah. And then they have to ask questions to each other to try to find, to tick as many boxes as possible. Question round, I like this one. You prepare a few questions in advance. For example, like what's my favorite meal? What do I like to do on weekend, etc. You prepare like a few questions. Then you put them in the middle, and one after each other, you take a question. You read it loud, but you don't answer it. But everybody else have to think what would be your answer. For example, I pick the card and it says, what's my favorite meal? Everybody have to give an answer. Oh, I think your favorite meal is French cheese. Oh, I think your favorite meal is for sure fish and chips, etc. Obviously, it's not fish and chips. I'm French. But every kid propose a response, an answer. And then the person who took the question choose the funniest or the one that is actually true and give a point to this person. And then you go like that. So it's a nice icebreaker. They get to know each other, to practice a bit phonetics, and to practice, of course, understanding question and giving possible answers. And obviously, as you can see at the end, for ideas of activities, Google is your friend. Don't reinvent the wheel. You have tons of activities already prepared, already structured online. That's also even like a good use of AI nowadays for teachers. For example, you put the level of your kids, you write like what they're interested into, you write your objectives, and it's going to give you a bunch of activities that you can use. That's always nice. And one more thing that I didn't told you, sorry, for new teachers sometimes they don't do it well, is how to correct a kid. Please, 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 do not cut a kid in the middle of an answer because of a mistake. Please. If you do it all the time, they're going to be annoyed and they're going to be afraid of doing mistakes. Don't correct right away. If you hear very often the same mistake coming from one kid or from a bunch of kids, just always have a piece of paper next to you and write it on this paper and go on with the lesson. And then at the end of whatever activity you are doing, you just took your paper and say, hey guys or girls, here is one mistake that I heard a lot when we were speaking. So you always, you don't have to name, of course, the kids, but some of you always, for example, like say this, but you should not say that, it's wrong, you should use these adjectives or whatever. So yeah, don't like overcorrect the kids. Also, if they are beginners, it's totally normal that they're going to do mistakes. They don't have to speak perfectly. For example, if your objective is how to ask a question, it's totally okay if they don't ask perfectly well grammarly made questions. It's okay if there is a few mistakes. It doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Because especially for beginners, if you want them to speak perfectly after only like 3 hours of lesson, it's not gonna work. It's okay if they make mistake, as long as they are not very important mistake that make them not being understood by the other. I give you an example, let's say for French. The orthograph, like how we write the words, is not important. If you make an activity and they need to write something, if it's written phonetically correctly, but there is an orthograph mistake, it's okay. Now, if they're advanced and they really want to learn how to write correctly in French, then please, of course, correct that. But yeah, overcorrection is really not a good thing. Oh, this is the end. I hope you learned a few things. Again, for new teachers, please, we have a lot of experienced teachers in the camp. Ask for tips, ask for advice. And again, you have so much things nowadays on Google. It's so much easier nowadays to find activities, to find videos, to find exercise. So yeah, please use this. I hope it was useful for you, and good luck for your time in friLingue. I'm sure it's gonna be fine, and see you around. Have a nice day. Ciao, ciao.